Good evening. I'd like to call to order the council meeting of Monday, July 8th, 2024. Everyone who can rise, please rise for the playing of the national anthem.
Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton brasse porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the July 8, 2024 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have the West End Home Builders Association, Anthony Salimi. Welcome. Please come to the podium.
Good evening, members of council, town staff, and members of the public. My name is Anthony Salemi, and I represent the West End Home Builders Association in partnership with the Niagara Home Builders Association. I'd like to thank the town and council for the opportunity to speak today again about the proposed community benefits charge, background study, and bylaw. I'd like to thank town staff and HEMSN for taking the time to address some of the concerns raised in our previous delegation and correspondence, including the presentation of a revised capital program, which represents a $3.3 million reduction in eligible costs, as well as clarification of line items such as civic design and improvement. WHBA continues to have concerns regarding the provision of parking and tree canopy funded through the CBC, as well as the funding of an affordable housing program that has not been developed by the town. WHBA encourages the town, if proceeding with the CBC, to fund programs that are well-defined through council and budgetary considerations. We encourage the town to offer assurances to the industry that in future, when policy changes are considered that may impact the home building industry, that the concerns of the industry are taken into consideration early in the process. We have asked that council consider a transition provision for developments that are currently in the draft plan approval stage by the town, and we are asking a delay in implementation of the bylaw by 1 year. While the town has identified there are no in-progress applications that meet the criteria of in the draft plan approval stage, we ask that the town consider this request through the principle of fair and reasonable policymaking, as this particular juncture in the planning process represents a stage of advanced planning where budgets and costs are baked into projects. It is important for the town to provide assurances to builders and developers that costs will not be added to developments that are this deep into a long process, and this should include developments that have proceeded past draft plan approval, including site plan approval and conditional building permits. It will also provide certainty of process for businesses to continue to invest in Grimsby. I'm joined by my colleague, Michelle Diplock, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to receive the delegation? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the delegation from West End Home Builders Association be received. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have Councillor Frake for your Corporate Services Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The committee met on June 3rd, and we have received previous minutes, Corporate Services, Grimsby Downtown BIA, the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and the Grimsby Downtown, another set of BIA AGM minutes. We also received, give me a second here, 3 consent reports. The first one was an update on records retention, which included the removal of the requirement for approval from a municipal auditor. It had some updated definitions in the bylaw and updated processes to reflect the electronic records. There's an updated classification and retention schedule included, and there was an outline of the responsibilities of staff, the elected officials, and the town clerk or designate. There's a lot more detail to this if you want to see it, but that's basically what we received. Second report was an update on the civil ceremony and marriage licenses, which we started, I believe we started doing marriages here about 3 years ago. Anyway, the ceremonies are performed in the council chambers by the town clerk. This year, we have partnered also with Nels Manor, so we are now offering Nels Manor as a site for marriages, which will be quite nice. We did 19 ceremonies last year, and we have done 13 ceremonies this year. So it seems to be catching on. It's $300 for a license, and it's being very successful. So if anybody in the audience wants to get married at Town Hall, we'd be happy to receive you. The third report was from IT Services. It was a website migration update. So the migration has already happened, so we've gone to a new website or a new face on the website. There's some interesting stats. One I found very interesting was the top internet browser is Safari at 43% and is up 33% since last year. It's quite a bit. And Chrome is down by 41%. It's interesting. There's a couple of other stats. There's a lot of other stats in there, actually, and you're welcome to look at it. The town has increased the number of quick-click icons on the site. The green used on the website includes the new icons. The town has changed the imagery to brighten up the page. There's a large presence of Let's Talk Grimsby. There is a feed on the landing page which pulls content from our social media channels. There's a calendar of events. This is all on the front page. The town has increased the number of social media icons to ensure residents are aware of all platforms. And there's a new Contact Us page. And that was pretty much it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Up next is myself with the Planning and Development Committee meeting from way back on June 5th. So much has gone on. It seems like a real long time ago. Just a one-item meeting pretty much on 502 Winston. It was short and really not a ton happened on that, and it's still there's still trying to figure out what they're actually going to do, I think, quite frankly. So that was pretty well everything for that meeting. So up next is Councillor DeVoley from the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. The Finance Committee met on June 27th, 2024 at 6 in the evening, and we had quite a number of items on our agenda. I'll start with some of the highlights after we get past approving the various minutes. We had a presentation by an investment advisor who now comes to us from CIBC Wood Gundy, which was quite interesting. And at the end of it, the Finance Committee, though, asked the Treasurer to report back on the portfolio, on our investment portfolio, but also to consider how our internal investments can be addressed within our investment policy. Our financial policies have all been bound together and circulated to all of our Finance Committee meeting members so that, and we have a schedule as to going forward for when the committee will be reviewing various of them. In addition, in item number 8, we looked at our forecasted debenture needs and went through that in some detail. As well, we reviewed the Peach Cost Center expansion cost update, and that was received as well. Things are, progressing as expected, I will say. As well, we approved the issuance of the grant funding to Hamilton Health Sciences Corporation for $9.3 million, which will go towards the construction of the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. Because of sections within the Municipal Act, the funding must actually go to Hamilton Health Science Corporation directly and not through the foundation. In addition to that, of course, we have been collecting through the tax levy for a number of years an amount that we thought would be equal or approximated the debenture principal repayment and the interest costs. So because of that, we only need to go out and issue a debenture for $7.369 million, and that will be done for a term of 20 years only. And as the last part of that analysis in all of this, of course, we have to make sure that we stay within the town's annual repayment limits and so on that are given by the province, and our treasurer confirmed that we are on side with that. The next item on the agenda was our fire department aerial truck replacement. I'm going to say that the cost came in at $1.747939, so basically $1.7 million for our truck, which they tell us would now be in the neighborhood of $2.4 or $2.5 million. Were we replacing it now and not when we first placed the order a few years ago? Because that is just slightly different from what was originally budgeted, the Finance Committee approved the additional funding of $99,561 to finish payments on the truck, and that will come from a reserve. The last item on the agenda really has to do with a struggle, I would say, that our members are all having. The Finance Committee traditionally meets on Thursday, and the agenda and the reports are released on 48 hours beforehand. So I will say sometimes on Tuesday, but usually sometimes Monday afternoon. And our members are finding that that is rather tight, that they really only have a few evenings to look things over. And especially in the case of our lay members, many of them work full time as well. So unlike some of us who are retired, they don't have the day to look at the reports. They only have the evenings. And of course, they too have lives outside of their work, and they have work commitments that involves meetings as well. So we had quite some discussion about this, and basically are asking for your support that because we're recommending that the agenda be published before the end of the day on the Friday, so the meeting is consistently on the Thursday afternoon, and we're asking staff to consider issuing the agenda and the reports on the Friday before the meeting. And I believe that covers all the items that we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Up next, we have Councillor Bradzi for the Joint Fire Services.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. The Joint Fire Services Committee met back on June 19th. We finally received our third-party consultants report, and I think I can speak for everyone and our colleagues in Lincoln when I express our dissatisfaction with the timeliness and eventual quality of the report. We also discussed our fire master plan, but the majority of our discussions were held in closed session due to ongoing labor relations. So I just want to caution any questions regarding those. I'd be happy to provide more of a detailed summary if we wanted to go into close to discuss that tonight. But the results of that was to extend the pilot by 1 year and to hire a new consultant to get a more thorough review and study of the pilot. There's a motion prepared for council to vote on tonight. The committee also made a subcommittee comprised of Councillor DeVoley and Councillor Mikulik to draft a new terms of reference for the pilot. And that was essentially it.
Thank you, Councillor Bradzi. Oh, Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, if I could just add on some additional comments to Councillor Bradzi. Yes, certainly there was a lot of frustration over the length of time it took to get this report. This pilot project has been going on for some time. Not to say that the Fire Master Plan didn't contain some useful information in it. It certainly did, but I describe it as this, that we were hoping the crystal ball would become much clearer with the recommendations from the consultants, that we would have some clear direction on various things, like should we stand alone, should we continue jointly, you know, where do we stand with a volunteer fire force versus full-time firefighters and so on. And I can only say at the end of the day that the report pretty much said you can do just about anything you like. So, you know, I guess that was our first concern, was that the crystal ball is still very foggy in my mind, and that there really was no clear direction given on all of this. The second thing I would say that concerned me personally and others about the report it certainly was based upon historical data up to 2021. Unfortunately, 22, 23, and partway into 24, that data, statistics, and so on was not incorporated into the report. And in fact, I would say the failing of the report is that it didn't give us any forecasts as to, you know, data going forward and what we could expect and so on, right? And so, you know, there are a number of concerns we had with the report. We would like to continue jointly with the town of Lincoln to pursue a second consultant to assist with the Fire Master Plan. So I do, you know, concur with Councillor Bradzi. Basically, the committee was unanimous in its decision that we would like to extend the test pilot project by a year. And so to that extent, I have a resolution in front of me. And so may I put those on the table? Timing is of the essence in all of this. So I will defer to you, Mayor Jordan, as to how you'd like me to proceed with this.
Yeah, I'm certainly quite happy for you to proceed with the resolution. And I just want to add a little bit that maybe it was our representatives from last council and our previous CAO, but we were certainly, as a council, left in the dark on fire services. And it's very disappointing that we were just given the rhetoric of all the consultants working on it. It's going to be finished sometime. And then 18 months later, after the due date, we get a report that is just really literally unacceptable and doesn't answer the questions I think that we put forward. So I think I'm happy to see your resolution come forward. Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. It's kind of a weird situation because I haven't seen any of the minutes from the meeting, and apparently there are no minutes from the meeting. So now we're being asked to vote on something that there's no minutes and the meeting is not streamed. So we really don't have much information on other than what our colleagues are telling, not that I don't trust my colleagues, but we're still left in the dark because we're voting on something without the proper information from the minutes of the meeting. So do we know when we're going to expect those so that we can actually, I haven't seen the report, so I have no idea really what it says.
Okay. I think if we listen to Councillor DeVoley's motion, it might make things a little clearer to hear what the proposed motion is. Actually, do you mind getting that ready to show on the screen, the first one? But I can advise that the process from Lincoln's perspective is that the minutes from the June Fire Services meeting must go to the September Fire Services meeting to be approved before they come to council, and therefore that would delay it until October. Which is why this motion is being put forward in hopes that, given it's a one-year pilot that's being suggested, that it doesn't delay that. So I think the motion might make things clearer, though, so we're not talking about hypotheticals.
Certainly happy to give a bit of background as I kind of walk us through the resolution. So the first part of it is that the Joint Fire Services pilot project be extended to the end of June 2025, which is exactly what was passed in the meeting. That the Joint Fire Services Advisory Subcommittee negotiate a new service agreement for the one-year extended pilot project, and that the approval of the service agreement by the full committee be done in time for their next meeting, which is scheduled for September 18th, 2024. So the subcommittee has some work ahead of it. The subcommittee, by the way, is comprised of both town CIOs, the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, Mr. Kay, as well as a councillor from the town of Lincoln and a councillor from the town of Grimsby, namely myself. And we have already worked on setting up meetings. Probably will need more than we have, but we are truly trying to move this forward so that it is approved by the full committee on September 18th. That would take us a little over 3 months into the extension of the 12-month pilot and project being extended. So time truly is of the essence. The second part that we're asking is that our council receive the Town of Lincoln Council's approval to extend this pilot project as well. Their next meeting is scheduled for August 6th, so we're asking that we get confirmation that they are on side with us by August 8th, and we want to ensure their commitment to proceed with the pilot project extension as well. There is a second one that kind of goes hand in hand with this that talks about the our requests for proposal on that. So, of course, the entire committee was, I will say, unanimous in that we felt we needed to go forward and hire a second consultant to assist us with a new fire master plan. And so the recommendation from the committee is that council proceed with a request for proposal for a new fire master plan, but conditional upon a few things. One, that we receive the Town of Lincoln Council's approval of this and of the cost-sharing arrangement, again, by August 8th, as that's their next scheduled meeting. And we do want to get that RFP out by mid-August in order to give us enough time to settle on who will be the chosen consultants, to give them enough time to actually do the work. The thinking being that hopefully we can get a report from the consultants by, I'll say, April, May at the latest, and then that the committee receive that, look at it, come up with recommendations to both councils in order to meet our 12-month extension to June 2025. So time really is of the essence to get that RFP out, and the town of Grimsby volunteered to put that RFP together and issue it. And so that is the part one of this particular resolution. Part two, I would say, is one of those conditional things, because obviously the conditions are that the town of Lincoln is joining us in all of this. So if the town of Lincoln decides that they are not going to continue on, we still think it's very important that the town of Grimsby continue on this path. And so we're asking that Grimsby staff be directed to proceed with a Grimsby-only fire master plan request for proposal, should the town of Lincoln decide not to proceed with us. Happy to answer any questions from my fellow councillors, too.
Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just have a question. Since we formed this Joint Fire Services Committee, which goes back now to last term, we haven't seen one single fire department report, like a statistic. We used to get one every quarter. We get a statistical report about what's going on within the department, within the town, as it relates to fire and emergency services. Can we somehow include, can we get, in the meantime, while all this is going on, can we not get a report telling us what's going on within that domain? I mean, can we add that to the resolution, or maybe you can speak to it? Thank you.
I'd be happy to speak to it. Yes, we, under the terms of the agreement, and I can assure my fellow councillors that I think I have read this agreement in detail about 10 times and went through paragraph by paragraph, making my own notes on things we have done and things we have not done. And I will definitely concur with your concern that that even the Joint Advisory Committee was supposed to be getting operational reports and so on, and unfortunately that didn't happen either. So I can assure you that those are very, very deep concerns, plus more, that we have, that we want to really look at the governance of all of this and do it very quickly before we go through the next 12 months.
Was that a yes? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so
Do we have a second?
we have Councillor Devoli as the mover
Two motions.
for both motions. Seconder? All right.
Sorry. This one's first.
Okay. All right, moved by Councillor Devoli, second by Councillor Bradsey. Resolved that the Joint Fire Services pilot project be extended to the end of June 2025, conditional upon number one, the Joint Fire Services Advisory Subcommittee negotiating a new service agreement for the one-year extended pilot project, and approval of this service agreement by the Joint Fire Services Advisory Committee at their next meeting scheduled for September 18th, 2024, and that Grimsby Council receives the Town of Lincoln Council's approval to extend the pilot project by August 8th, 2024, as their next scheduled council meeting is August 6th, to ensure that their commitment to proceed with the pilot project extension. All in favor? That's carried. And for the second resolution, we've got Councillor Devoli as the mover, seconder. Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Devoli, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council proceed with a request for proposal for a new fire master plan, conditional upon that Grimsby Council receives the Town of Lincoln Council's approval of the Joint Fire Master Plan and cost sharing by August 8th, 2024, as their next scheduled council meeting is August 6th, to ensure that their commitment of meeting the deadline is complete, to complete the Fire Master Plan by June 2025, and that if approval is not received by August 8, 2024, that Grimsby staff be directed to proceed with a Grimsby-only Fire Master Plan, RFP. All in favor? That's carried. Good. All right. All right, up next, we have adoption of the previous minutes, corporate services from June 3rd, 2024, special counsel June 17th, 2024, and finance committee June 27th, 2024. Did I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor DeVoley, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor DeVoley, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the following minutes be approved. Corporate Services Committee, June 3rd, 2024. Special Counsel, June 17th, 2024. Finance Committee, June 27th, 2024. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have receipt of board minutes, Grimsby Public Library Board, Committee of Adjustment, May 16th and June 19th. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved the following board minutes be received. Grimsby Public Library Board, May 8th, 2024. Committee of Adjustment, May 16th, 2024. Committee of Adjustment, June 19th, 2024. All in favor? And that's carried. Up next, we have announcements. Councillor Frake.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Hot off the press. I received an email from our IT department today, our IT and Communications. They finally can confirm that Rogers have an approval to build an additional cell tower in Grimsby in the Lezac Farms area. So that's really good news and should give Grimsby some great new, stronger cellular signals across the town. So that was really pleasant, good news. This will probably be done by the end of the year. I think we just have some good news once in a while. There's some good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. Councillor Bradsey.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. Just announcement that the Region Transportation Steering Committee finally met this past Wednesday. The kind of goals for the committee will be to advise the Regional Public Works Committee and provide insight onto their transportation master plan, which should provide Grimsby a good opportunity, seeing as we're currently undergoing the same one. And I ended up actually being elected chair of the committee, so looking forward to getting some chairing experience there. Also, a second announcement too, it was a pleasure to be joined by Mayor Jordan, and we're honorary rib tasting judges up at the first ever Grimsby Rib Fest, which was a tremendous weekend and a lot of great fun. So looking forward to potentially seeing more of those in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Bradsey. Yeah, the ribs were really good, and we picked the winner. The judges picked the same winner as the public did, so we were consistent. Any other announcements? Seeing none, I just want to announce that the 2024 Mayor's Master Golf Tournament is scheduled for August 28th, 2024. That's only 7 weeks away, so you have to get some rounds out there to get practiced up for the 28th. Registration is open. Sponsorship opportunities are still available for the 2024 Mayor's Master Tournament. Join us for a day of friendly competition, camaraderie, and help us raise money for the Community Services Department and United Way Niagara. This exciting golf tournament will take place Wednesday, August 28th, 2024 at 20 Valley Golf Club. Registration for the tournament is now open to teams of 4. The tournament will follow a scramble format, ensuring an exciting and fair competition for all participants. Don't miss this opportunity to connect with your fellow golf enthusiasts and philanthropists. Mark your calendars and secure your spot now. For more information about the 2024 Masters Tournament, including registration details and sponsorship opportunities, please visit the Town of Grimsby's website or email golf@grimsby.ca. I hope that everyone will join us for a day of friendly competition, networking, and philanthropy at the 2024 Mayor's Masters Golf Tournament. Thank you. Seeing no further announcements, Councillor Seaburns here for a regional councillor update. Good evening, Michelle.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Nice to see everybody today. I didn't have a meeting for June to report on, so This time, I'm going to give a report based on a councillor request. So I did have a request from a councillor wanting to know about the capital cost with regards to the redevelopment of the 3 long-term care facilities in the Niagara region. I like getting requests like this because it makes me have to do some homework and find out a little bit of things. And the region does a whole lot more than even I thought. So I think maybe next report is going to be a report on what the region does and maybe a brief description. So what is the definition of a long-term care facility and how does it differ from a retirement home? Simply put, a long-term care facility provides 24-hour-a-day professional nursing and professional care and is funded by the province, along with a set co-pay that's paid by the resident, and sometimes a small levy amount if the two numbers don't add up. Whereas a retirement home, residents are required to pay the entire cost and require less care. In Grimsby, the region's Deer Park Suites is a long-term care facility, as well as an assisted living facility. There are up to 39 long-term care beds and 26 assisted living beds. The region's long-term care homes are funded by the provincial government, the set copay, and a smaller amount with the levy. Assisted living is funded through residential fees and provides non-medical assistance for older adults that can manage some of the day-to-day care. Niagara currently has 32 long-term care homes, 8 of which are run by the region. 3 of the regional long-term care homes, which is Lynnhaven, Gilmore, and Upper Canada Lodge, are slated to soon be redeveloped based on requirements of the province to bring these homes up to a particular class of care. As a result, the region has embarked on 2 construction projects which will combine the beds from 2 of the smaller facilities, that's Upper Canada and Gilmore, and to make it one large 160-bed facility, and then rebuild the other home, Lynnhaven, adding 13 more beds. This will optimize the building size. You have a report that goes into a lot more detail with regards to how they decide how much each facility will get. I decided not to bring that up because it gets kind of messy in the translation. So suffice to say that there was more capital required for these 3, and unfortunately, it did require substantial levy dollars. So in 2020, so 4 years ago, they decided on this project, and the capital project is financed as follows. The upfront capital is $25.3 million from development charges. There's a one-time provincial funding of $15.7 million. That leaves a debt balance of $150 million, which is going to be funded by the regional levy and the provincial per diem funding. The debt is paid over a 25-year period, and it required a 1.5% levy increase, which was approved in 2020. That works out to approximately $7 million per year is going towards this project. There's also $3 million per year of provincial funding to make up some of the shortfall. The operating costs, so the costs of running these facilities on a daily basis, are all based on a per day, per bed basis. So of all of the homes in Niagara, it comes to $73.4 million from the province, or roughly 74%. 19%, or $24.9 million, comes from the homes themselves, and this is the residents at these homes. And the remainder, $9.2 million, is from tax levies to cover the shortfall. The magic number for these houses is 128 rooms. And at 128 rooms, you can have the maximum number of staff for the number of patients you've got, whereas in Deer Park, it is a smaller facility, so our cost to run the same facility is considerably higher. So I hope that answers the questions that were put forward, and I'd be happy to answer anything, or I would at least try to answer anything else.
Thank you, Councillor Seaborn. Any questions from council? Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you, Ms. Seaborn. That was quite enlightening. and gives us a sense of where the region is going. And so I'm going to ask you a question about the long-term planning for our homes. You noted in here that Deer Park Villa is a very small home with 39 beds, so it's probably one of the smallest ones that the region has now, and that you have taken two, I guess, Gilmore and Upper Canada, and have combined them into one, and they were 80 beds, and they're now combined. So long-term, after you finish this project at the regional levy, with the Deer Park Villa being only 39 beds and therefore more expensive to run with such a small bed number, long-term, is the region thinking it may need to increase the size of Deer Park Villa, or have they looked at that at all?
Very good question, and I'm going to have to extrapolate based on some of the stuff they told us. These facilities have to be 97% filled at any given time. So Grimsby is probably not going to fill a 128-bed facility in the near future. Will it? I cannot tell you. It is the smallest facility, so it is the most expensive to run, and it does incorporate people from Smithville and Beamsville as well. But there are private facilities out there. There are not-for-profit and profit organizations that run these same homes, so perhaps they'll pick up some of the slack left behind from Deer Park.
So I think what you're really saying is that until the numbers justify that particular long-term care home will not be expanded.
I believe it has been expanded in recent history, but there are no current plans to expand it beyond what it is right now.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your report, Michelle. Have a good evening. Up next, we have several consent reports. Can I get a mover and seconder to approve the consent reports? Moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Davoli, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that Council hereby approves the following items and that the various consent items be approved and the recommendation is contained therein. PA 21-14, FIN 24-19, FIN 24-20. A, that report PA 24-14, Council Direction Report, 2 5th Street, 227 Main Street East, dated July 8, 2024, be received, and that Council proceed with passing the designation bylaw for the properties at 2 5th Street and 227 Main Street East. B, that report FIN 2419, Grimsby Community Development Grant Program Policy Update, dated July 8, 2024, be received, and that amendments to the FIN REV 004, Grimsby Community Development Grant Program Policy to standardize the policy for continuity purposes be approved, and C, that report FIN 2420 Canada Community Building Fund Agreement Renewal dated July 8, 2024 be received as information. One, that Council approved the bylaw 2452 attached as Appendix B to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to execute the municipal funding agreement for the Canada Community Building Fund for the period 2024 to 2034. All in favor? That's carried. Up next, we have IC Report 28126-1223 and IC 28337-1223. Can I get a mover and seconder to get the item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Davoli.
Just need to give Michael a minute. We're moving fast. He wasn't ready.
Okay. All right, I'll read the motion while Michael gets on screen here. Resolved that the Integrity Commissioner report IC 28-126-1223, IC 28337-1223 be received, and that Councillor Charwaz's remuneration as member be suspended for 45 days. Michael, welcome tonight.
You might need to repeat that.
Michael, I'm just welcoming you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah. Do you have anything that you want to say prior to this, prior to taking questions from council, if we have any?
No, I don't, Mr. Mayor, other than just to say you have the report. My investigative partner, Ben Drury, completed the investigation and produced the report. We reviewed it together. I just texted Ben, actually. I believe he's on his way into the meeting as well. So if there are any questions, he can also help to answer them.
Great, thank you very much. Questions or comments from council? Councilor Bradzi.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you. I think I do have to kind of clarify, was kind of mentioned frequently in this report. So I'm just kind of curious, I mean, should I have been kind of reached out for a comment at some point, or just how many times, I guess, would I be mentioned by either party before being asked for a comment?
Yep, thank you. So through you, Mayor, it's probably a question for Ben, to be fair, but we didn't feel it was necessary to get any evidence from you. There was nothing in here that that required your input. We know that your name was mentioned by another councillor in evidence, but it wasn't necessary for us to gather any other information in order to make the findings that are actually within the scope of this investigation.
Okay, thank you for that. And also kind of just, I know we spoke at the last one of these about kind of reprimands, and I know we have a policy in kind of the works, but just to kind of pick your brain a little bit while you're here, just to draw attention to the one quote where it was proven that the I don't want to say, I guess, defendant was speaking on behalf of personal views and not views of the town. Would that be permissible for any other reprimands that involve speaking on behalf of the town?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. I'm not totally sure I understand the question. I guess what I would say is that if you're making public statements as a council member, regardless of whether you're doing it as an individual or as a representative of the town, you're still beholden to the code of conduct. I would suggest that if you are making it seem as though you are speaking on behalf of the town without appropriate authority to do so, or in a way that misrepresents what the town has actually done, or whatever the decision was, or whatever the policy is, then that in itself would also probably be an infraction of the code. But generally speaking, if you're making public statements of any kind, there's no difference really between being an individual or being a council member when we're looking at those things, with the exception that I just mentioned, which is how are you representing the decisions or policies of the town?
Thanks for that, and I just wanted to kind of provide some comments and views, I guess, on the situation at large. As disappointing it is to be in this situation, I think a lot of these actions provide a lot of negative public feedback too. And especially in the results, I think it was that CBC article that kind of painted a picture that was entirely inaccurate of the situation and what was going on. And kind of just given the length of this and the fact that there's six infractions, I know you've gone beyond from 15 to 30 to 45. Was the amount of infractions a factor in increasing the penalty? And would it be kind of typical to see like a per infraction based penalty?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So yes, the number of infractions is a factor in determining, the recommended sanction in this case, or in all cases. In this case, it wasn't just numerous infractions arising all from one incident, but it was numerous incidents over a period of time. And all of them were infractions. So yes, that is a factor that's considered when making a penalty recommendation.
And lastly, I just kind of suggest that maybe we view this as the minimum 15-day suspension per infraction.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, through you, Mayor. I don't really tot up, infractions that way necessarily. I mean, there are lots of factors that you have to consider. And I think we put that in the report. And that's not something that we've, shied away from doing before. Like there are numerous reports where we've used the same sort of calculus. There are other things to consider, the severity of the infraction, the circumstances around which it happened. Is there remorse being shown for it? Different factors like that. I mean, we've put them out in the report, as I mentioned, that we would consider. I think probably in most cases would take more of a holistic view rather than a chalk off, like totting up of, case by case by case and just adding it all together. I think there's certainly you have to take other things into context when you're considering an appropriate penalty.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. A quick question for the CAO. Were we provided with harassment training? I can't remember. I might have missed it. I know I missed a couple training sessions for due to work. So I'm just wondering if we were provided with harassment training when we first started?
To you, Councillor. I don't think we've had a specific training in regards to harassment training. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And through Chair to Mr. Maynard, I have a concern with a few of the comments in here, but one in particular was, it's on. He suggested that she is a conspiracy theorist and he is worried that she'll cause some serious damage to people and herself. That sentence really concerns me because if that is a true belief, and there are also statements in there that the investigator thought that this is a personal issue and that both sides feel that they are bullied and harassed. But if somebody honestly believes the other person is at risk of harming themselves or others in the situation, do you still believe that punitive measures is the right course of action in this case?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I don't believe that's the intended meaning of that particular statement. I think, first of all, you would have to ask Councillor Frake because those, I believe, are his statements. And Mr. Drury was simply capturing Councillor Frake's evidence and his point of view with those statements. But I don't believe the statement had anything to do with that risk of hurting themselves and others in the kind of way that I think you're implying. I think it meant that when you are making broad, sweeping statements about the state of play in terms of politics, in terms of the workings of a committee, those types of things about the town without, evidence or proof or solid backing for doing that you could do reputational damage to those bodies, to the committees, to the town, to fellow councillors. I believe that's the context in which that statement was made, from my understanding. Mr. Mayor, through you, if I could maybe defer to Mr. Drury to comment further on that, or at least to, if he believes that's correct.
Absolutely. Mr. Drury, if you have further to add, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Good evening, everybody. The way I look at it, like that submission was literally written by Councillor Frake himself. It's a reflection of what it was he had to say. The recommendations we made are based on Councillor Charwa's conduct. It's just the findings that were made were a reflection of this was conduct that she undertook that is contrary to the code of conduct. It doesn't make any effort even to get into what the state of mind is or if there's anything else of that nature going on, which is really just a subjective opinion by Councillor Frake. The findings we made are based on her conduct and only her conduct. We didn't delve any deeper into even attempting to make any findings of the kind that are sort of inferred there.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you, through Chair. I respect that, but throughout the whole report, there are many references to her mental state and questioning her mental state. So I understand that maybe you didn't take that into consideration, but it's referenced several times throughout the report.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Again, we're simply setting out what other people have said. It wasn't our experience directly. No findings that we made through that investigation process. Again, I would defer through you, Mayor, to Mr. Drury if he has anything to add to that.
Go ahead, Mr. Drury.
Sure, yeah. Even if, first of all, we're not empowered to make a finding of whether somebody has that kind of mental state or not. It's not within our power to investigate that sort of issue or to make a finding if it was. I'm not even of the opinion that even if a finding like that would or could be made, that it would change the fact that the conduct in this case happened. This is a sitting member of council who's subject to the code of conduct, and that member contravened the code of conduct. If you want to find that there were mitigating factors because of something that we didn't look into, didn't find and couldn't find, that would be within your rights. But it's simply, this case is just a reflection of, this is a sitting member of council subject to the code of conduct, contravened the code of conduct in several ways. We made findings accordingly.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor DeVoley.
Thank you. A question first for our town manager, if I could, and sorry to put you on the spot, but when we had our swearing in as councillors way back at the beginning, there was an entire page that we read, and I really thought that one of those was to abide by our rules of conduct, et cetera, et cetera. So I can only say that we promised to do that. All of us did at that particular time. I realized that sometimes, and we've all been provided with the rules of professional conduct, perhaps not with specific training sessions on it, but just like in my profession, the code of conduct is shared with all the members, and they're expected to familiarize themselves with it and to abide by it, even if they don't have their hands held to specifically do that. It is still considered that we must stay up to date on these things, we must be knowledgeable about them, and we must conduct ourselves accordingly. The other thing I just wanted to share in my remembrance is that we also had some training sessions on communications and so on. And I always remember the phrase, and I may not quote it exactly, but that, we should never tarnish the brand of the town of Grimsby, right? And unfortunately, as I recall, I don't think this particular respondent was actually at that training session, and that's too bad, because that was the one thing that really stood out for me, is that our conduct really needs to, certainly be held to high standards, because otherwise we can tarnish the brand. And unfortunately, in this case, we have a number of instances where it appears that actually has taken place. And I will end there.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoley. Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, just to establish a timeline, do we, and if it's mentioned in the report specifically, then I apologize. When was this complaint received by the Integrity Commissioner in relation to the other complaint that we've already dealt with and punished this council member for?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So there's two complaints here that we were dealing with. And as you may recall, Councillor, there was a lot of back and forth dealing with whether or not some of the stuff was investigatable or not, which is fairly standard, by the way. Obviously, we've done that before with respect to in meeting or in session decorum type issues. But these complaints were received in November and December of 2023 initially. And of course, the timeline was significantly extended as a result of the fact that some issues needed to be sort of dealt with through successive council meetings, with respect to the in-meeting decorum issues, as well as just the sheer volume of materials that were before us and several extensions that were requested along the way and so on and so forth. But I don't recall what the exact date of the other complaint was, but these ones were from November and December. I believe that the other complaint that we dealt with that you're referring to was from December as well. So similar time frame.
Councillor DeFlavio?
Through you, Mayor. So the reason why I'm asking is because if we've already punished this counselor, one of the things that's mentioned in the report on page 67 is that this isn't a first offense. Like, you know, it's implied that this is progressive discipline based on the fact that this council member has broken the code of conduct before. The only question I have, the reason I'm trying to establish a timeline is because if that other infraction actually, if it was actually, the complaint was made after this one, then that would have been, if it was dealt with in the order in which you received it, that would have been the secondary complaint. Does that make sense? Am I making my point clear? So if this one came first, then it would have been the one that we dealt with first, and the subsequent one, for which we gave 15 days, would have been the next complaint. So that timeline's important, I think, in how we determine the amount of punishment. So I don't know if you can find that specific information, when specifically those complaints came in, because I think that's important in determining how we deal with the consequences.
Well, through you, Mayor, I would actually disagree with the councillor on that point, and I don't want to get into a debate about it, but if both of these had proceeded at exactly the same time and you were dealing with both of them tonight, I rather suspect that you would have the exact same results before you. I don't think it would make a difference. We would simply say, here's one incident we dealt with, and here are 6 that we dealt with, and we're recommending this penalty for this one and this penalty for these ones. I don't really think the timing in the way that you're suggesting would make a huge difference to that. We're not talking about successive instances of the exact same conduct. These are all different types of conduct happening over a period of time that were sort of lumped together into 2 processes. Really could have been 3 processes, actually. But to save some time, ultimately it didn't turn out that way. But the intention with lumping things together usually is to streamline it, which is what we've always done as a practice. So the fact that this ended up dragging on and taking a lot longer and is before you now, I don't think it really makes much of a difference in terms of the penalty. The fact is that we had one issue that we dealt with, and now we've had more than 6 issues that we dealt with, but 6 that we actually ended up making findings on here, which is really what feeds mostly into the penalty recommendations.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I guess I'll have to agree to disagree on that one, because I know that I would have dealt with it differently. I would have considered it differently if those 2 had come tonight at the same time, because I would have thought of it as one punishment for all of those things rather than separate ones. But everybody might have a different opinion on that. So you mentioned the timeline and the length in which it took to complete this. The report mentions that 90 days is the recommended timeline. This is about 8 months, I think, if it came in November, 7 or 8 months later, for something that actually occurred 10 months ago, or 11, or 9 or 10 months ago. So that for me is a pretty loose interpretation of the 90-day guideline. But I want to ask you about your recommendation for punishment, through you, Mayor. 45 days seems extreme. And again, I agree there should be some sort of reprimand or punishment. I've gone on the record before with saying that, and we've asked that our code of conduct be updated to include remedial measures, because I don't think that any of these kinds of punishments actually curb the behavior. I think that education and training is an important part of this. That being said, do you have any other examples of code of conduct breaches that have resulted in a 45-day suspension, so we can compare kind of apples to apples? Because I've never been a part of a council that gave a 45-day suspension before. So I can't say, oh, when we did this before, this was something that the person did and this is a reasonable amount. 45 days seems extreme to me, but I could be completely wrong. I've looked around the province and I've seen things like 30 days for like genuine harassment. And then I've seen 30 days for other things that seemed minor to me. So if you could have some sort of, if there was some sort of comparison that we had that said, you know, in these cases, this is the punishment that other people have given, I would feel a lot more comfortable with the 45-day penalty. Do you have any of those kinds of examples that you could provide for us, saying, you know, in X municipality, this is what happened and this was the punishment that was given?
Thank you, through Mayor. So I'm going to address the first comments first. So with respect to the timeline for this, I think it was explained thoroughly in the report itself. You know, when the complaints came in prior to the Christmas break, we offered extensions to the parties with respect to responding, so they didn't have to do so over Christmas. There were further extension requests from the parties in terms of their responses. There were 2 meetings where I had to address issues with council with respect to whether or not certain issues council wished me to consider. That's not a question of whether or not they are code issues. It's a question of whether or not council wished me to consider them. So all of those things added up, plus the fact, as Mr. Drury indicated in the report, the sheer volume of submissions that we had to deal with, the fact that there was essentially 2 processes that had to unfold back to back in order to get this thing over the line, and the length of the report itself, because of the amount of infractions, the amount of allegations, the amount of evidence that we had to deal with, I think fully explains why this report, unlike most of my other reports, was well over the 90-day timeframe. In terms of your second question, Councillor, I would say to you that I don't have any reports to hand right now. I do this a lot. I'm the Integrity Commissioner for 18 municipalities and 3 school boards. To ask me to remember one report from somewhere where I may have recommended something else, I'm not going to be able to do that. I don't have it to my fingertips right now. Ultimately, you know, Mr. Drury and I are not here to defend our position or defend our recommendations. We're not on trial here. You are welcome to suggest a different penalty to your council colleagues if you feel that's appropriate. But I can tell you for sure that I'm aware of other cases where there have been other penalties. I'm quite certain that I've been involved in cases where 90 days has been handed out by council, sometimes with or without my recommendation. But to actually pull a specific case out of the air and cite it for you right now without having an opportunity to dig through my archives or do a web search or whatever, then I wouldn't be able to do that. Although certainly any reports where there have been recommendations are public. They will be available through, you know, a Google search or whatever on the various municipalities' websites. You should be able to find some cases where those penalties have been applied. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Mr. Drury?
Yes, thank you. I can speak to a couple of those points. First of all, with relation to the 90 days, it's not a requirement under the Municipal Act to meet the 90 days. It's a guideline and a suggestion. It's not. What we are required to do is follow the Municipal Act, and nothing in the Municipal Act mandates 90 days. The 90 days is honestly for the benefit of complainants. It's complainants that get prejudiced by increases in the time it takes to do a report, not typically respondents, especially where there is a finding. It was entirely a volume-driven result in this matter. With respect to the 45-day suggestion, I can tell you I am the Integrity Commissioner for the City of Sarnia. Literally just earlier today, Council for City of Sarnia considered a report I just issued where there was a recommendation for a 45-day penalty. You could Google it. It's against a councilor named Bill Dennis. It's in the news. It's definitely a fairly frequent. It's not something that is not an unfrequent suggestion. I often think of it as sort of like the 90 days really sets out a maximum guideline in terms of like, okay, what's some of the worst conduct you can imagine? There was a case in the city of Ottawa a few years ago, Shirley, where there was just cases of repeated sexual harassment against members of town staff on a repeated basis. The courts, the Integrity Commissioner just made a recommendation for 90 days. The courts accepted that. I often think in my own view that like that is sort of sets the upper bound of what's appropriate, where, okay, to get the maximum penalty of 90 days, there has to be something really, really bad here. So we didn't approach that in this case. I can tell you, like in some of my initial drafts when I was thinking about this, I was higher than 45 days. It got reduced as time went on. to get to the 45, but my thoughts were based on the volume of issues that were found in this case. There was a cumulative impact where I think, in my opinion, it would be inappropriate to ignore like the number of different contraventions that took place here. And if there were to be a different complaint filed about each of them, if you were to add up what the violation, what the recommended penalties probably would have been, my assumption is it's more likely not to have been higher cumulatively than 45. To some extent, I think there was actually a reduction to the 45 by virtue of it all coming in one package like this in the way that it did. That's my own opinion.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Excuse me. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think just sort of general commentary, there are parameters of behavior. And then there's behavior that's outside of those parameters. And I honestly think, having had a lot of harassment training, because I spent 30 years in the federal government, and it was a requirement every couple of years to do that. You know, it's not rocket science. It's not complex. It's pretty much common sense for a lot of it, you know. So I'm not sure, with all due respect, that harassment training can really make a difference when people's behavior fall outside of those parameters. And I know that I have at least, you know, on one occasion stepped outside of those parameters, and when I was able to compose myself, I immediately apologized to the person and as well as to everybody else that was in the room, that I wanted them to know that I was, that I apologized for what I'd said. So I think we know when we step out, like you know, I don't need a course to know, you know, when I've been bad. And I think in this case, this collection of incidents has caused reputational harm, not only to our town, like our brand, to members of this committee, and to members of the GDAC committee. I mean, you know, and these are residents who are volunteering their time. So and since the last event where the counselor was found given a reprimand of 15 days, not really seen any difference in behavioral actions towards actions that she's demonstrated. And when I think about, you know, Councillor Frake talking about conspiracy theories, I have to say that I think it is not uncommon that this councillor makes an assumption that people are doing things behind her back when they're not. And I think this was really highlighted in an email that she made reference to in the report, where she saw a photo of MPP Oosterhoff talking with, I was the Minister of Transport maybe, and she had sent an email asking sort of who gave him authority to talk to this other minister, and, you know, who's talking and telling him he's allowed to do that, and what discussions has he had with staff here. And I had not seen the photo. So when that email came to all of council, my first thought was, what's she talking about? And I was going to respond and say, what are you talking about? Then I thought, well, that might just inflame the councillor. Councillor Howe asked that question. And shortly after, because this went to all of council, Councillor Frake said, I'm not sure what you're talking about, because he had not seen this photo either. And the response is, quote, you know damn well what I'm talking about, Reg. So I'm sitting there thinking, whoa, I have no idea. I have no idea what you're referring to. And then when I find out the MPP had a meeting with another minister talking about things that we had discussed in the term before this one when I sat on council, and no doubt had been spoken about in terms before I even came and became a member of council. So, I mean, it was just some things are so out of the blue. So, like, where I struggle here is how do we, I mean, there's one thing to kind of punish the act, or acts, because there were 6, but how do we prevent future? Like, how do we get this back on track with this counselor? Pardon? Training. My colleague has said training, but I'm afraid I don't agree. But can I have one more minute? With respect to a reprimand, what can be included in a reprimand? Or is it just, you've shown bad behaviors? Can it be beyond that? Can anything be included in that? Can any suggestions for training or whatever, even though it's not in our code of conduct yet? I mean, I get the punishment and I understand the punishment, and I have to say, I believe it's warranted, but then going from here, because we've already gone from the first one and nothing changed. So what can we do for this 2 to 6 here, or 2 to 7? How do we get this back on track? What else can we do? I get punishment, but how can we rehabilitate? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barty. Any further questions? Councillor Bradzi.
Not so much a question through you, Mayor. Just some more comments here. I think kind of the bottom line here is that this behavior has been extremely unprofessional. It's been conducive of a toxic and us versus them environment, and it seems to only be getting worse with no signs of improvement, which is the main concern. I think looking at this holistically, we've discussed in-meeting decorum issues, we've discussed over email issues, social media issues, and even in-person issues now trickling down into the committee level and as well as the public. This cannot continue. It's caused a lot of harm to the town's reputation and starting to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. We need to course correct, but other than the suspensions provided, I don't think we've got any clear direction on that until we establish that in the COC. But that being said, we've all got dissenting views at times. We need to work together as a team and row in the boat in the same direction, even when that's difficult. So I'm going to suggest an increase to the 90-day suspension. Enough is enough of this behavior, and I'm going to go with the maximum.
All right, do we have a seconder? Just to get it on the floor. Seconded by Councillor Vardy.
No, just vote on e-scribe.
All right. All right, we can vote on e-scribe for a 90-day penalty. Councillor Frake.
I just wanted to, I think I'll abstain from this vote.
All right, that'll be noted. All right, so that motion was defeated. So now we have the original motion, which is a 45-day suspension. You can vote on e-scribe again. And again, Councillor Frake is abstaining from this resolution. Yeah, we can, you can speak, Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I agree with all of the comments that were made. I was torn over whether to speak about this or not because I don't want to appear to condone conduct that is unbecoming of a councillor. I think that somebody who is relatively new as a member of council should be given the opportunity to learn, and that's why I voted against the 90-day suspension. I think a 3-month suspension in the second year of somebody's term is an extreme punishment. As representatives of the town of Grimsby, we're entrusted with the responsibility to serve our residents with integrity, respect, and dedication. Our rules demand that we engage in political dialogue that's not only robust, but respectful and constructive. And healthy debate is a cornerstone of democracy, so I think the debate part is important. But positive relationships among council members are crucial for our collective success. And when we foster an environment of mutual respect, it makes a big difference. You know, we don't always have to agree, but we do need to respect one another. And I hope that we can move forward in a way that we can collaborate and be congenial and use those kind of guiding principles to work together instead of fighting over things like this. Last thing I wanted to talk about is the financial cost and the reputational costs associated with integrity commissioner complaints. They divert valuable resources from staff, from council members. I spent hours reading this report instead of spending hours working for the good of our community. You know, these are all things that I wish we didn't have to deal with, and I hope that we can find a way not to deal with these things in the future. We should be worrying about the challenges that Grimsby faces rather than the challenges that we're creating for each other. So I hope we can move forward. Anytime we deal with something like this, it undermines public confidence in the council. And when we set a high standard, we're not just setting a high standard for ourselves, we're setting a standard for the community. And when we're bickering and fighting amongst ourselves, we're making it okay for that to happen in the community as well. So I hope that whatever punishment we agree to tonight, and it's probably going to be the 45 days, we still go forward with the idea of correcting the behavior, not just for us, for future councils as well. And if we know that this is an issue, and social media was not something 20 years ago that I had to worry about as a councilor, not something that I even thought about, but it's clearly something that is an issue in a modern council. But we really didn't do any discussion in our training about social media and the use of social media and how it relates to the code of conduct, despite the fact that it's mentioned in the code of conduct. So I would love for future councilors to receive a very detailed training on social media so that way we can avoid this kind of thing. Social media should be a benefit, not a detriment. It should be a way to share information and make a positive change and answer people's questions, not this negative, hate-filled debate that, or not even debate, argument that's occurring that we're dealing with today. So let's deal with this with professionalism and civility is my conclusion, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeFlavio, and I think attendance tonight speaks volumes. Any further questions? Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan and my fellow councillors, I went back to my notes of April 15th when we talked about this issue last time, and I would just like to share what I shared back then, that I think we really need to be led by 3 guiding principles. They all start with R's. So for the sake of that, I'll call them the 3 R's. And it was noted in the report too. The first R being remorse. So does the respondent tonight understand what the standard of conduct is, how they did not meet it? Do the actor feel bad for their conduct and their actions? And unfortunately, I did not see that in the report, that the respondent feels bad nor has any remorse for what they did. Remediation, what steps have they taken themselves on their own to make amends or to learn from this? And so far, I have not seen anything there neither. And the risk of reoffense, what I will call rehabilitation, are they at risk of reoffending? What steps do we need to take to protect others, councillors, the public, residents, and so on? And unfortunately, I find the probability there to not be in the respondent's favor, neither on the risk of reoffense based upon current information. So although, I understand the role of training and the suggestion that has been made at the table, I would also like to point out that 4 members of council, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have councillors who are on council who have been on before, and then we had 4 new ones who had never been on council before. And so although we might say that, well, people are new and they don't understand, but the truth of it is that 3 out of the 4 have not offended in this way so far. So obviously it is possible to understand the rules, to know where that line in the sand is, and to abide by them. And unfortunately, one has not. So I have to say that although this makes us greatly sad that we're dealing with this again and again and again, it needs to stop.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you. I just have a question, a clarification on procedure here. I understand, we're supposed to be asking questions to the Integrity Commissioner. How much, I'm uncomfortable with the way this conversation is, and I was uncomfortable last time. I feel like we're sitting here talking about somebody in an inappropriate way, and we're adding to whatever issues there could be, and it was clearly explained in the report that there feels to be bullying and harassment. I'm not going to speak to whether that's true or not, because that's not what the investigation was about. But if that perception is there, and then we're all sitting here in a live streamed video talking poorly about this person, and I get that there has to be accountable for actions and stuff, but we're straying from the report. So procedurally, are we supposed to be doing that? Are we supposed to be asking questions on clarification to the report? Maybe that's for the Integrity Commissioner. I just don't want to be caught up in a situation where now I'm contributing to a situation that I don't want to be a part of, quite frankly.
Yes. Michael? I think you're muted. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Through your worship, I'm here, and Mr. Drory, here. We're here at council's pleasure. We're here to answer questions. I have no opinion about, if council, how council goes about its business otherwise. I'm here to answer questions that are put to me, and otherwise to be quiet, essentially.
Councillor Korstanji.
Thank you. But can you just clarify our role here? Where are we crossing the line of conduct here in this situation?
Through your worship, so like I said, my presence is here to answer questions, but the reason that I'm answering questions is to help inform council on the decision that it has to make. I can't sit here in judgment of specific comments that have been made or not made, but my understanding generally of council procedure is that there has to be some level of discussion so that council can inform themselves and each councillor can make a decision based on that information. I would say that probably you would do that not just through questioning myself or Mr. Drory, but probably also through dialoguing with each other about your opinions about the subject matter. I mean, that's basically the only way that I could see this working. I can't really tell you what the answer is. We've made our recommendations, and it's up to you as a council to discuss or debate those recommendations, and then to implement whatever you in your collective wisdom seem fit. And I guess the process of dialogue is how you arrive at that at the inevitable conclusion, whatever it will be.
Mr. Drury?
Thank you. Yes, and I'll give you this opinion, like not as your integrity commissioner. Mr. Maynard is your integrity commissioner, but I will speak to this as an integrity commissioner elsewhere within the province. And so I do have some opinions about this topic as a general matter. First of all, just procedurally, the Municipal Act sets out this procedure that you're going through. The way this works, if a complaint is made and a contravention is found by the integrity commissioner or delegate, as in this case, we issue the report. It's then we make a recommendation. It's then council's, not option, it's council's duty to consider that recommendation that we made. So what you're going through right now, considering the recommendation that we've made and debating it, is part of the fulfillment of your duty as council under the Municipal Act. So it's exactly what you are supposed to be doing at this point. With respect to just whether a level of comfort in addressing this issue, this is really a matter about council self-governance, which is what so much of this report is about, what so much of this issue is about. We've said, again, a few different reports that council's right to self-governance is paramount. So council has to govern itself procedurally within meetings, but there's also an issue of just a general treatment by members of council towards each other. That's a matter that you definitely, I'm not telling you should, but I would definitely think you should have an interest in what happens among yourselves, in what happens in how you govern yourselves as a group. So certainly I think having that discussion among yourselves, what you think is appropriate conduct among yourselves as members towards each other is entirely appropriate, especially in the context of what you're here to discuss with this particular report, which is your duty bound as a council to consider a report of the Integrity Commissioner that says a contravention has been found by one of your fellow members. This is perhaps the most appropriate time to have that kind of a discussion, in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Bradzi, then Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Maynard. We've been through two IC reports now. How many more are on your desk for Grimsby?
Through your worship, that's not really information I should disclose. These processes are meant to be carried out privately until a report is made to council. And a report is usually only made to council when there is a finding of a contravention. Otherwise, it's closed with an administrative letter to the clerk. So I don't believe it would be appropriate for me to answer that question right now.
Okay, thank you. That eliminates my second question. But I'm just trying to look forward. It's all good. I'm just trying to look forward for a solution. And recently, I kind of found the region's social media conduct policy to be quite thorough. So I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe we look at adopting that. Especially as a new councillor, I just found that it was a lot more detailed and kind of outlines the requirements, especially when it comes to advocating for any region or town issue. So maybe we just wanted to suggest that.
Your worship, may I ask a question of the councillor? Are you, if I may?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Bradzi, are you referring to the Niagara Region social media bulletin?
Through the mayor, yes, I am.
I wrote that.
It was well written.
Through your worship, thank you. I wasn't looking for praise, but I would be happy to assist Grimsby if you're looking for something like that.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I concur with everything Councillor Davoli has said. I wish we weren't here having this discussion right now. I really do. I wish that it wasn't necessary. And however, if we didn't deal with this issue, and if we didn't, as I said before, it's not just the person who files the IC, it's the person that, say, provokes, and I'm not, just who provokes the IC to come about, right? So you can't blame the person who filed the IC. Because, as you said, we're a self-governing body. So I wish we weren't here, but we'd be abrogating our responsibility if we didn't deal with this behavior. And I want to stress behavior versus person, because we want a certain set of behaviors to stop. And so we're not talking about the person, unfortunately. I mean, there's, of course, a connection, but we don't want to see those behaviors continue. And this is the only venue, way, process that we have to try to turn this around. So that's all I got to say.
Seeing no further questions, can everyone please vote on the e-scribe for the resolution?
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, thank you. I'll abstain from voting.
Thank you, Councillor Frake. That's noted.
I just want to say, though, I don't have to, but I am.
All right, that's carried. Up next, we need a mover and seconder for, thank you very much, Michael and Mr. Drury. Ben, thank you very much for your time and your insights. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you as well.
All right, now we'll move to FIN 2421. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeVoley. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor DeVoley. Resolved that report FIN 2421 Community Benefits Charges Strategy and Bylaw July 8, 2024 be received as information, and that Community Benefits Charges Strategy Revised Capital Program Appendix A prepared by Hempson Consulting Limited be approved, and the Council adopt a Community Benefits Charges Bylaw Appendix B. The Council approve the remaining existing Section 37 Reserve Fund, Community Benefits Reserve Fund to Community Benefits Charges Reserve Fund, and that the Reserve and Reserve Funds Bylaw 21-86 or 85 be amended to reflect the change. All in favor? That's carried.
No.
Oh, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. I just wanted to propose a small friendly amendment that any development that receives site plan approval prior to January 1st, 2025 be exempt from this, and then be retroactive after that date, just to provide some sort of transition period with the major change.
Yeah, it's not. That's an amendment. It's not a friendly amendment, because we've certainly discussed this, and there's been a long lead time, and developers have been well aware of it. So,
Do you have a seconder?
yeah. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Bradzi? I see no seconder, so that's defeated. All right, Councillor Frake has a seconder. Yeah, why don't we vote on e-scribe? I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bradsey, second by Councillor Frank. Resolved that bylaw 24-53 be amended to include a transition period heading that states that the community benefits charges take effect on January 1st, 2025, and that any development that receives site plan approval prior to January 1st, 2025 be exempt from the community benefit charges. Vote on e-scribe, please. All right, that's defeated. All right, now we move back to the original resolution. I've read the resolution, so we can vote e-scribe again. And that's carried. Up next, we have notice of motion. First up, Councillor Bradsey, the leash-free study. Councillor Bradsey, can you read your notice of motion?
Yes, Mayor, through you. So whereas many residents in the town of Grimsby own dogs and voice desire for more pet-friendly spaces and park improvements, and whereas the town of Grimsby is currently undergoing a Parks Master Plan, therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to conduct a comprehensive leash-free study as part of the Parks Master Plan. The study should outline strategies and approaches as part of the development of an evidence-based best practice approach to dog parks and leash-free areas in Grimsby. This includes, but is not limited to, a review of international best practices for design, signage, rules, accessibility, shade, sheltered surface materials, fencing, and dog-specific amenities. A process to proactively identify and fund new leash-free areas where most needed, reflective of population distribution and development, and in balance with other park functions and uses, such as tandem usage with sports fields when they're not in use. A process to identify and fund priority repairs and improvements, including design improvements to existing parks and leash-free areas, and a process for considering the introduction of fencing where appropriate to address safety concerns. Includes accommodation for all types and sizes of leash-free areas, including those in urban settings with limited parkland available, and potential opportunities for volunteers and businesses to steward these areas, and ambassador programs to promote responsible dog area use and promote responsible dog ownership. I acknowledge that this motion will be considered at the August 12th, 2024 council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradsey. Up next, we have Councillor Davoli, committee vacancy.
We're going to put it into the Parks Master Plan, but this event, this date really is immaterial to the Parks Master Plan. It's going to be a longer process. So the dating is to me, irrelevant if it's going in the Park Master Plan.
Yeah, it's certainly the notice of motion's been on the floor and it's coming to that meeting, so we can debate it then.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Davoli.
Yes, so this notice of motion, Mayor Jordan, has to do with the vacancy that we currently have on the Finance Committee. I guess you could call it the recruiting notice of motion. So whereas Councillor Charwa resigned from the Finance Committee at the April 25th, 2024 meeting, and whereas the Finance Committee's terms of reference allows for up to 4 members of council, and whereas the Finance Committee currently has an even number of members with a potential for tie votes, therefore it be resolved that And I would like to say we are open to volunteers this evening to be appointed to the Finance Standing Committee. I don't know if we need two-thirds to consider that, which I would ask it be waived.
Yeah, show of hands for two-thirds to, all right, that's passed. Councillor Bradley.
Oh, pardon me.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Well, I also was someone who had to resign from the Finance Committee, but that was due to GDAC's reporting structure. So I resigned from Finance to become a member of the GDAC Committee. I would very much love to come back if possible, but we'd have to amend some rules. So I don't know if that's possible to do tonight, but I just would table my interest if that were to change.
As the procedural rules and specifically how committees are appointed, the only counselor that is actually eligible to sit on this committee, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, is Counselor Korstanji. Sorry, I wish I'd given you advance notice. I just found that out. If this is something council would like to see addressed in September when I bring forward our procedural bylaw updates and code of conduct updates, it's certainly something we could consider in terms of the reporting structures and how they work with standing committees. So I'm happy to leave that up. If you want to give me that direction, I can take that back and we can look at who's appointed to what committees.
Thank you. The days and times of the meeting, when are they?
The meetings are always held on Thursday at 6 p.m. and traditionally it is the last Thursday of the month.
Okay, I'll do it.
Great, thank you, Councillor Korstanji. Just a show of hands for Councillor Korstanji. Well, it seems to be unanimous.
I also think.
Congratulations. Makes our clerk's job a little easier.
Yes.
All right, up next, okay, Councillor Duval.
Yes, so thank you to the councillor for volunteering. But I would like to just address Councillor Barazzi's concern, and I still think it's a valid one that we should ask our clerk to look at so that when I'll call it the tweaking or the adjustments on our governance comes back to us in the fall, I would certainly appreciate it if that could be looked at that time.
Great, thank you. And up next, we have Councillor Korstanji, then accessibility to the new Casablanca waterfront playground.
Thank you. Through Chair, whereas there has been community concerns that the new playground recently constructed on the Casablanca waterfront is not fully accessible to children with disabilities, and whereas it is our responsibility to provide an inclusive and accessible environment for all children in our community, and whereas this initiative will demonstrate our dedication to equity and accessibility, ensuring that every child has the opportunity to enjoy and benefit from the playground, therefore be it resolved that we immediately reevaluate and correct any accessibility needs of the new playground and immediately implement any necessary corrections. I acknowledge that this notice the motion will be given consideration at the August 12th, 2024 council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Korstanji. Up next, we have correspondence, City of St. Catharines, Niagara Peninsula. Councillor Vardy. All right, so Councillor Vardy has lifted the City of St. Catharines to discuss it separately. Need a seconder. Councillor Frake. Go ahead, Councillor Vardy.
Well, I think it's an excellent motion, and I wonder how we could just adopt this motion for ourselves.
Through the mayor, typically we would ask for a staff report back. So if you would like to put forward that motion on the table about implementing a similar program in Grimsby, we would ask that staff report back on that.
Okay, if I could just sort of clarify though, it's not a program. The motion just says that they're preparing a staff report. So I'd like, I guess the same thing, a staff report on what they're doing would be fine. Would that be the appropriate way to phrase it?
All right, so the motion would read, asking staff for a report on this program.
Through the mayor, I would suggest then that council vote on endorsing the letter in St. Catharines and also requesting a staff program as outlined in their letter.
Perfect. Okay.
Councillor DeVoley.
Mayor Jordan, if I could make, I'll call it a friendly amendment to that, that the staff report go back to the Public Works Committee that deals with these matters.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask staff since Brandon's here. It's a Green Roads pilot project. So, City of St. Catharines.
Sorry for miscommunication through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll definitely look at that. I haven't, not familiar with the program, but I can certainly look into it and get back to the committee.
How quickly do you think you could come back with a report?
I don't know yet. If you can give me some time, I'll take it away with the team and see if we can come back pretty quick.
By Q4? By no later than Q4? How's that? Okay.
I think that's reasonable.
Councillor Howe.
Through you, Chair. Do we even know this works? It's a pilot, and they mentioned one other place. And, you know, if St. Catharines is running a pilot, if they're going to do some testing, why don't we sit back and wait for their results and see what they come up with, instead of duplicating?
And they're having staff prepare a report no later than Q3, so
Yeah.
Q4 would work.
Yeah, we still don't know what this shit is, so.
Yeah, I guess the deadline for the funding from the Green Infrastructure Program is August 14th, so we won't make that, obviously, but it is something that we can bring it back for informational purposes.
Well, if we could endorse it, and perhaps in the meantime, our Director of Public Works can take a look at it. And if there's any part of it that he could make application, if there's a piece of it that he thinks he could get through by the deadline.
We're just waiting on the wording of that resolution. All right, we have a resolution now moved by Councillor Vardy, second by Councillor Frake, that council endorse the City of St. Catharines Green Road Pilot Project and that staff report back on the feasibility and other relevant information applicable to Grimsby. All in favor?
Wait, there was a friendly amendment, though.
I think that administratively we'll catch that one. All right, so that is carried. Now we need a mover and seconder for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Water Quality Monitoring Program summary. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor DeFlavio. Resolved that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Water Quality Monitoring Program summary report for the year 2023 be received. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 24-48 to 24-56 inclusive, and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Next council meeting is scheduled for August 12th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. Good night, everyone, for our regular meeting. Can I get a mover and seconder to move into closed session? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that council meet in closed session under Section 2392K of the Municipal Act, which states that a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board specifically related to a lease agreement for municipal parking spaces, Century Condos. All in favor to go into closed? And that's carried. We'll see you after we get out of closed.
Take a 2-minute break.
And we'll All right, can I get a mover and seconder to proceed to open? Moved by Councillor Howe, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that council proceed to open session. All in favor? And that's carried. Welcome back, everyone. We're now in open session. Can I get a mover and seconder to proceed with the direction in closed? Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the direction provided in closed session regarding the short-term lease agreement with Century Condos for municipal parking spaces be approved. All in favor? And that's carried. Can I get a mover and seconder to pass the confirming bylaw? Moved by Councillor Corstangi, second by Councillor Howe. Resolved that the leave be given to introduce bylaw 24-57 and that same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.